Imagine it's March 2022. Brussels, Washington, London. Men in suits step up to podiums and say the same sentence with slightly different accents. These sanctions will cripple the Russian economy. The ruble would collapse, the budget would implode, the state would be starved of cash. This was supposed to be financial shock and awe, a modern siege, no tanks, just spreadsheets. And for about 3 weeks it looked like it worked. The ruble fell nearly 50%. Russian stocks were frozen. Headlines declared economic ruin. But then, something weird happened. The ruble stopped falling, energy money kept flowing, and by the end of 2022, Russia quietly posted a $227 billion current account surplus, according to the Russian Central Bank and IMF estimates. Let me say that again, slowly. In the year the world tried to economically strangle Russia, Russia earned more foreign currency than ever before. Oh boy. This is the real story of the sanctions war. Not the press conferences, not the moral speeches, but the energy plumbing underneath the global economy. Because once you understand energy, you understand why this backfired, and why this playbook might fail again. Here's the core truth most people miss. Sanctions are a financial weapon. Energy is a physical one. And when the two collide, physics usually wins. Russia didn't survive sanctions because it's clever or heroic or uniquely resilient. Russia survived because you can't cancel oil and gas with a press release. In 2022, Russia ran a $227 billion current account surplus, according to the Russian Central Bank and IMF estimates. Energy revenues accounted for roughly 45% of federal budget income, Russian Ministry of Finance. Europe paid more for energy after sanctions than before them, Eurostat, IEA. So today, we're doing an autopsy, not of Russia's economy, but a sanctions strategy that misunderstood how energy markets actually work. We're going to break this down into 7 nails in the sanctions coffin. And by the end, I'll ask you one uncomfortable question. If this happened to Russia, what happens when sanctions hit someone even bigger? Let me ask you something. If a bakery refuses to sell you bread, but 5 people outside are offering to buy it at a discount, is the bakery sanctioned or just changing customers? That's oil. In early 2022, Europe announced it would phase out Russian energy. The US banned Russian oil imports entirely. Cue applause. But oil is not a local product. It's not milk. It's not bread. It's a fungible, global commodity. According to the International Energy Agency, Russia redirected millions of barrels per day to India, China, Turkey, and a growing gray fleet of intermediaries. Yes, the oil was discounted, often $20 to $30 per barrel below Brent, but here's the part people miss. Oil prices globally surged in 2022, peaking over $120 per barrel. So even discounted Russian oil often earned as much or more than pre-war prices. Discounted cake sold during a famine. By late 2022, India increased Russian oil imports by over 10 times year-on-year, Reuters. Russia became one of India's top oil suppliers almost overnight. And if you think that's temporary, wait. Because this rerouting created new long-term energy relationships that didn't exist before. The sanctions didn't isolate Russia, they introduced Russia to new customers. But if you think that's bad, wait until we talk about gas. Europe didn't just sanction Russian gas, Europe replaced it with the most expensive alternative imaginable. Before 2022, Russia supplied roughly 40% of EU natural gas via pipelines, long-term contracts, predictable prices, low transport costs. Then came the pivot to LNG, liquefied natural gas. Sounds fancy, smells expensive, because it is. According to Eurostat and IEA, EU gas prices in 2022 rose over 300% at peak.
LNG imports forced Europe to compete with Asia on the spot market. Germany paid up to 10 times its historical gas prices during winter 2022. Here's the metaphor. Europe replaced a fixed-rate mortgage with a credit card. Sure, the house didn't collapse, but the bill did. Chemical plants shut down, fertilizer production collapsed, steel makers idled capacity. Germany, the industrial engine of Europe, flirted with recession while paying more for energy without Russia even selling to them. And where did that LNG come from? The US, Qatar, traders flipping molecules for profit. Meanwhile, Russia redirected gas east and flared the rest because high prices made even partial sales lucrative. Sanctions didn't bankrupt Russia, they taxed Europe's own industry. And that brings us to the ruble, which was supposed to be dead. Remember the headlines? The ruble is worthless. Except it wasn't. In fact, by mid-2022, the ruble became one of the world's best-performing currencies. How? Capital controls. Russia did 3 brutally simple things. Forced exporters to convert foreign earnings into rubles, restricted capital outflows, and demanded unfriendly countries pay for gas in rubles. Old school, not sexy, effective. According to the Russian central bank, capital controls stabilized FX markets within weeks. Energy exporters generated massive dollar inflows. Imports collapsed due to sanctions, reducing FX demand. Think of it like this. Russia's economy shrank, but its currency inflows grew faster than its ability to spend them. It's like getting paid more while being banned from shopping. Not ideal, but not collapse either. The ruble didn't reflect prosperity, it reflected forced scarcity plus energy cash. And once energy money stabilized the currency, inflation eased faster than many predicted. Which leads us to the part sanctions designers really didn't expect. This is the stat that makes economists sigh. According to Reuters, the IMF, and Russia's finance ministry, Russia's energy revenues in 2023 exceeded pre-war levels. Oil and gas taxes surged as global prices stayed elevated. Budget deficits remained manageable despite military spending. Let me translate. Sanctions raised global energy prices. Russia sold slightly less volume at much higher margins. That's not a punishment, that's a price shock subsidy. Even when price caps were introduced, enforcement proved messy. Shadow tanker fleets expanded, insurance rules were bypassed, middlemen took a cut, but oil still moved. You can regulate spreadsheets, you cannot regulate every ship in the Indian Ocean. And while Russia absorbed inefficiencies, the West absorbed inflation. Which brings us to the real twist.
Sanctions didn't just move oil. They redrew the energy map. Russia accelerated yuan-based trade with China, rupee settlements with India, energy diplomacy with Africa and the Middle East. According to China customs data, Sino-Russian trade hit record highs in 2022 and 2023. Energy formed the backbone of that expansion. This wasn't ideological, it was transactional. Sanctions told half the world, you can buy cheap energy or follow our rules. Many chose the energy. And once infrastructure, contracts, and habits form, they don't disappear when sanctions end. This is path dependency. Sanctions didn't isolate Russia from the world, they isolated the West from discounted energy. And now comes the part no one likes to say out loud. Sanctions work best when 1. The target depends on you, 2. You don't depend on the target, 3. Substitutes are cheap and fast. None of that applied here. Energy is not software. You don't just patch a gas pipeline. Europe learned this the hard way. Infrastructure takes years. LNG terminals take billions. Grid stability isn't optional. Russia learned something too, that energy isn't just revenue, its leverage. And while sanctions caused real pain inside Russia, make no mistake, they did not produce collapse. They produced adaptation. Which brings us to the climax. Here's what really happened. Sanctions were designed to drain Russia's budget, collapse its currency, trigger domestic unrest. Instead, they raised global energy prices, redirected Russian exports, and shifted costs onto consumers in sanctioning countries. Russia paid with inefficiency and long-term stagnation. The West paid with inflation, industrial stress, and political backlash. This wasn't checkmate, it was mutual damage, weighted differently. And energy was the shield. Because when you sanction a country that exports something everyone needs every day, you're not cutting off supply, you're bidding against yourself. Let's tally the damage. Russia lost access to technology and finance, suffered brain drain and reduced growth, became more dependent on commodities. Europe paid record energy prices, lost industrial competitiveness, and transferred wealth to energy traders. The global South got cheaper energy, learned sanctions aren't neutral, and adjusted alliances accordingly. This wasn't a morality play, it was an energy lesson. Sanctions are powerful, but only when they respect economic reality. Ignore energy physics, and the bill always comes back with interest. If you want the follow-up to this story, the one about why de-dollarization fears are overblown but sanctions fatigue is real, that's the next video. You know where to find it. And yes, hit the like button before your electricity bill reminds you why this matters.